Season 2 of the hit series Fallout picks right up where we leave off with the hunt for Hank as Lucy and the Ghoul travel to New Vegas.
It was kind of surprising just how big of a hit Fallout was. Like, you thought, right, this is a game series that could lend itself well to being a TV show because it has some slapstick kind of silly humor. It's got a lot of action and violence and stuff. So season 1 was definitely a surprise. So season 2, I thought was solid overall. I do have a few issues with some things they went and did. And here it did feel almost a little bit more like a video game this time around because it really felt with them, it's picking up right after Fallout Season 1. They're trying to chase down Hank, figure out what's going on there. And they're just kind of moving almost like mission for mission. All right, we're going to go to this town. All right, we check out what's here. He's not here. Let's go to the next town. Let's go to the next place. And it kind of went a bit video game formulaic in that way. Like, it was just like you were just watching them go through all of these main stories with a couple side stories mixed in. But I had fun with it overall.
Yeah, I really like this show a lot. It does follow a very linear path, which is fine, for that. But you also get a little bit of time jumping around in there too. So if you're not paying extra close attention, you could find yourself lost a little bit in what's going on because obviously you have the Ghoul storyline, Cooper Howard here, who's featured a lot more prominently in this season than he was as...
He kind of takes the lead.
He really does in this season. Yeah, it's really more focused on the Ghoul and like Cooper's journey through being like a spy on Vault-Tec and everything they've got going on. And you get a whole lot of that because I love Fallout New Vegas. That's probably my favorite of all the Fallout games, as it is many. It's still a very popular game. And to see that kind of play its way into this with some of the creatures that you get introduced to, like the Death Claws and some things like that, like you get... It's fun to see some of those New Vegas elements intertwined in here, but we've got some really interesting stories going along. Like you said, we talked about it in the intro. Like you're on the hunt for Hank, who's Lucy's father, who's kind of in the upper tier of Vault-Tec, but not really. But he's kind of taking on these experiments that he's doing in this season, and you got Lucy trying to track him down with the help of the Ghoul and. A lot of interesting, like you said, it's a very straightforward path, but you do venture off and have all of these other ancillary stories that are kind of happening simultaneously. It's kind of a lot to keep up with, but it's definitely one that is intended for you to pay extra close attention to pick up everything that's going on, when it's happening, and who's involved. And we get some awesome cameos in this season too of some people that I was very excited to see make appearances here who I didn't know how big, especially with one particular cameo, especially with the way it ended at the end of the season. Like, I'm excited for that character to continue to be a part of this show, given the actor that we got in that. But a lot of fun moments in this season, man. I'm really excited for the direction that it's going and where it's moving into in the season beyond this too.
Yeah, especially when we got introduction to the super mutant and you hear that voice for the first time, like, all right, I know exactly who this person is. Let's see. But yeah, that is kind of the main point of issue I have with this season is, was there too much stuff going on for the story points? Because we're introducing the Death Claws. We get the Rad Scorpions and Rad Roaches. We're seeing 2 Khazar legions, and not Caesar, because they don't know how to pronounce that correctly, but they're acting exactly like it. And you get Macaulay Culkin joining the cast and everything with that. But you just get so much. You got Vault 31 through 33. We still got all that going on with everyone who's thawed out. Then you're dealing with New Vegas and the Vault-Tec over there. And you're bringing back in the snake oil salesman. You got more different types of ghouls. You have the Brotherhood of Steel and all their factions, along with the Commonwealth being brought in. You have the President of the United States and politicians and all these flashbacks and everything. Like, it felt like they really jammed a lot in there from the games and stuff, but I don't know if it served the story as much as they kind of needed to, because it really became the focus of the Ghoul. Like, Lucy kind of became a secondary character in here. She kind of screwed over the Ghouls several times that they were supposed to be setting traps and doing these other things, and she's like, well, I'm gonna do it my own way, and I'm gonna do this. And he kind of, with out really faltering too much, kind of always came back to help her, even though she wasn't giving him the same type of look, which was a good dynamic to have between those two, but also left Lucy feeling a little bit thin on here because her whole mission this season was to get to her dad. And when we finally get there, she's very conflicted on what she wants to do. Is she going to go with what her father's doing, what her father wants, and she sees a little bit of good of what he could be doing, but just how bad it is as well. But it did feel like there was a bit of a step back for her, and even Maximus, because, you know, most of his time is spent with the Brotherhood of Steel, and then he kind of shows up at the end just to kind of help out a little bit. So I'm really curious to see if season 3 is going to get us back into Maximus and Lucy more, because the Ghoul kind of seems like he's going to be heading out on his own kind of side story now.
Sure, especially with the way that the season ends and where that's going to venture off to with another location from the games that I'm excited for them to explore, obviously. But the whole time spent in New Vegas, it felt rushed a little bit that I was kind of hoping they would explore more. I love when they got involved with, like you said, like the red roaches, but the death claws and stuff like that was a lot of fun when they got into it. And
I love they did practical mix with CG in there, and it just wasn't a CG fest.
Correct.
They looked really good with the practical nature of them.
Yeah, and I love the way that was shot. Like there's a lot of really awesome, strong visuals on this show, and even if you've played the games, like, you know, it's just brighter and colorful and, you know, more stuff like that. And I like that they kept that spirit in the show as well. Like, you get a lot of that bright color. I love when they veer into some of that slapstick stuff, because it does get very violent, but a lot of times it's done in such a humorous way that it works.
Arms falling off.
Kind of cushions the blow of the brutality that's actually happening in it, because it's almost to the point of absurdity, which I kind of appreciate. But they do a good job of finding that balance too, because it does get kind of dark and serious at some points dealing with that. You have a lot of the espionage element with the stuff going on down in the vaults, you know, especially when you've got, I'm trying to remember her name, is like the main, like the lady with
Stephanie.
the patch with Stephanie, you know, and all the stuff that she's got going on. And you get kind of the reveal of how she's connected to everything too, which is very, very interesting to see that dynamic moving forward too, and what her role has been throughout this entire thing. It's a lot of fun to keep up with, and I'm cautiously optimistic with where they're going for season 3, because, you know, you get in the throes of this story and there's so much going on, but also where they could potentially take these stories and how these guys are kind of all starting to commingle again, and you get the reunion of Lucy and Maximus finally at the end of the season, and see where they're going to venture off. But you have the very real Brotherhood of Steel issue that they've got to deal with, and she start to get more mixed up in that. And then, like you said, you've got the Legion running around doing their thing too with Macaulay Culkin, and
the Kaiser's Palace joke just got
hilarious. It's so good. Like, it was so funny. But I'm excited to see what Macaulay Culkin does. Like, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Like, it was fun to kind of see him be there, but you know what that character is in the games, and like, do they lean more into that going forward? We don't know, but it's exciting, man. There's a lot of cool things happening simultaneously that I hope they continue. I'm excited to see how they continue it through into the next season for sure.
Yes, there's a lot of story points that they open that didn't really get resolved, and that's again where I have a little bit of fault. Like it followed along and it got you to a resolution on some things, but it left so many new threads open, because you have the NCR, you know, coming in, you have the Legion and what they're doing, you still have a mess with the vaults because they're having trouble with water and everything else, and you've got the deeper mystery with Stephanie and her part of it, because she calls in something else that we really don't know, you know, from the show yet, what exactly that's going to mean. And, you know, we get a little bit of her backstory. It's really interesting to see what's going on and how they freak out when they find out where she's actually from and all that. And I will give it up, even though I've said, like, the Ghoul did become the primary on it. Walton Goggins is just incredible as a Ghoul. He does so good about making, even though they're the same character, making them feel different when they're doing the flashbacks of him still as a human being and being a dad and a husband and kind of being a spy, to how he is as the Ghoul is nearly completely different. Like, you can see a little bit of his humanity still in the Ghoul, but it's so different when he's playing Cooper than the Ghoul, and he's had to do double duty because of just how long it takes for that makeup, and then you've got more scenes he has to do back in the past and everything. He did a really fantastic job of really balancing that out, and I was surprised of just how big of kind of becoming the main star of this season it was, but it worked because he was very involved in what kind of led to Fallout happening and everything like that, and the cold fusion technology, and then you mix in Robert House and you've got all that mystery. So like in a way, like I enjoyed how much they open and how much lore and story they're bringing in, but I just question if it was maybe a little too much jammed into 8 episodes. I mean, you're not talking about an extremely long season. You're talking about cramming 40 different characters and story points and everything else in 8 round 1 hour episodes.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good problem to have, especially when you're dealing with that short of time. But at the same time, you're trying to world build and make all of these characters feel important. And I think they do a fine enough job with that. I really do. Like, it does get a little cluttered at times, but some episodes they spend more time in certain storylines than others. I do agree, you know, Walton Goggins does a lot of the heavy lifting on the show this season, which for great reason. I mean, he's a phenomenal actor, but you get the whole spy stuff with Cooper that's, like I said, spent a lot of time on in this season, more than I anticipated them really doing, because it was minor flashbacks here and there, but you see that whole through line for him where, you know, he's now in the present storyline of, you know, trying to find his wife and his daughter that he's just assuming are still around in somewhere because everybody else seems to be accounted for. And then he finally makes it, you know, spoiler, but he finally makes it to the cryopods, and he sees that they're not there. And, you know, there's a hint of where they're heading to for the next season. And now he's kind of, is he going on a wild goose chase here to kind of go to all these places? And you wonder, is he going to get that happy ending? Because we genuinely at this point do not know how long this series is going to last. Mm-hmm. It's been greenlit for season 3. I believe there was talks of a season 4. I don't remember if that's the case or not, but who knows how long this series is going to last. Amazon's more than willing most times, if your show is a hit, to give you a little more runway to kind of make this show you want to make, with the maybe exception of being Rings of Power that we kind of talked about before. But like some of these other shows have this longevity of multiple seasons, 4, 5, 6 seasons, and we'll see if Fallout gets that. But I'm genuinely curious as to how long they're intending to run this show, because like you said, they're only 8 episodes long, but there's still so much more to explore with this. Like, are they willing to commit to this long term or not? I don't know. It's kind of up in the air at this point. I don't know what they're feeling about it.
Yes, I'm curious to see if we do go back into the vault a little bit more, because especially the games, more of it is about the surface and everything that happens there, but we have so much, like,
there's a lot happening down there, too.
We maybe got an hour total of footage throughout those 8 episodes of everything that was going on below, and we've got a mutiny going on, and we've got a whole lot of different things that's happening. But like I said, there's so many story threads that just got started. I'm talking about almost getting to a middle point or a conclusion, like the Brotherhood of Steel and the madness that's going on there and potential war with that. Then you've got the war with the Legion, and you have Vault-Tec having multiple levels to the kind of stuff they're doing, because we find out, I mean, I've always known that they're the ones that dropped the bombs, but what exactly was the point? And, you know, Hank kind of dives into that more, that, well, they've had all these different experiments going on, which is that kind of fine line of walking the line of being a dark comedy, of where, like, he's almost like you got the cheerful old school music while he's blowing people's heads up, trying out these different devices to see if it's like, I'm just going to thaw these people who are in the high security vault cryos, and he's just unfreezing people and putting chips in them and blowing up their heads, and then moving on to the next person like they're lab rats.
No
and
remorse,
it gets with no remorse, and it gets into that, okay, this is a really dark comedic, because there's smiles and there's this, and because especially when you get to the snake oil salesman and everything that happens there. But like, if that opens up, okay, what is this going to mean? Like, when, especially now, saying like the experiment really wasn't the vault, it's what's now on the wasteland. Well, what does that exactly mean? What are they going to? And Now we also have Robert House, and what exactly is his end game? Because we have the Enclave, and we have Robert House, and we have so many different organizations and groups that are doing different things in here. It does become a little difficult to juggle all these different parts. And as much as I did love the Death Claws and what they did with them, I almost feel like they threw in too many.
Sure.
Well, because in the games they're supposed to be extremely difficult, hard enemies to fight and kill, and you get a group of like 20 of them, and it's a fun action sequence in there. Sure. But it's a lot of them in one place, and that's where Vegas felt like you were on one strip, and then you were at the vault and that kind of stuff. You didn't get to see a little bit more of the area. You got the people afraid to help out. You've got Thaddeus shooting with his toes and stuff. Like it does do a good job of mixing that humor with the darkness and because it does get very graphically violent still, and you get a lot of dismemberment and being speared through a chest and everything else. It becomes a lot, but they just walk that line of, all right, we're going to go dark, but we're going to try to make something light and funny out of it. But probably the biggest thing I was a little bit disappointed in, just because I don't know what they were trying to do with it, was the vault. What's it, 31, where all of the frozen cryowars that Norm ran into? Yeah. Like, what exactly was the kind of purpose of that? Because without spoiling too much, we get a little bit revealed about some of their motives and what the people are in there, and then we kind of just have to move away from it because of a big sequence that happens. Like, well, what did that really reveal to us or move us forward with the story or no? Yeah. Because it's kind of just left us in a part, well, did you just do all this so we can have a big rad roach scene or something, or raid? It just, I don't know. It felt a little off, including that of just how much stuff we had going on in this season. That felt a little bit underdeveloped.
Sure, and that's a fair point, because before you know it, they're fighting their way to the surface level, and you know, as we know from, you know, not only season 1 but up to now, like it's a completely different world. Like, those people were very sheltered in those vaults, and then you have these people who have been, you know, cryogenically frozen for a long time,
200 years,
a long period of time, and they're not really used to how things work up there, and they're kind of overwhelmed very quickly when they get up there, and they do kind of breeze through that, and I do feel kind of the same, that it was underserved and underdeveloped a little bit there, because you kind of wanted to see a little bit more revealed through that. And who knows, we may get a little more in the next season to maybe explore that dynamic a little bit more with, you know, who's left and what they've got going on too. But circling back to like the Vegas aspect of it, like you kind of hit the nail on the head, where they just didn't spend that much time in that location. Like, I think some of our expectations for this season going in was they were going to explore that space a little bit more, especially given how popular New Vegas is to the actual Fallout franchise. Like, that's a game that's still very popular online now. Like, and that game's been out for a while. Like, it's a very popular title in that you know, series of games, and the fact that they really didn't spend a ton of time in there is a very interesting choice, especially considering that you've got the Ghoul moving on where he's moving on to, and you just wonder, since he was kind of the de facto lead in the season, is he kind of going on his own adventure that we get a little bit of exploration in season 3, and we go back to the Lucy Maximus dynamic? I don't know where the focus of this season is going to be, because are they going to be staying in New Vegas, or are we doing kind of like a hybrid where they're in Vegas, but, you know, Ghoul's on his journey and they're split for now? How much time they plan on spending in each? Because like you said, they packed a whole lot into these 8 episodes. Now, if you're splitting our 2 biggest protagonists on the show, like, how much time are you really going to dedicate in each section? Are you going to spend bits of every episode, or are we going to get like episode jumps where one episode is like a Lucy Maximus with some of the other ancillary stuff is, and then the next episode going to be Ghoul centered? Yeah,
you just wonder if they've opened up too many. That's what I'm saying.
Like is it almost too busy for them to really write a solid, cohesive story in a short amount of time? Because like you said, if they're going to keep to this 8-episode format, which all indications are that they are, because they haven't broken from it yet, Like, how is that dynamic going to work moving into season 3? It's a very real question that I'm interested to kind of dive in and see what they're looking at creatively, because I can't imagine it's going to take too long for them to go back to this. I don't know what the production schedule is at looking like. We've done no research on any of that going into this.
I thought I heard something that they might be going back into production by the end of the year for season 3. So.
It makes sense. We may get something in 2027 for it, which is fine, and I'm okay with that, but yeah, I'm interested to see where they go forward with it, because there's a lot going on, and you just don't know where their heads are at as far as like the stories they're going to tell. It's an interesting place to be for the show, because like you said, there's just so much going on, and we don't know how long they're going with it. So we got a little bit of a ways to wait.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, like what do we do with kind of Lucy's character now that she, spoiler wise, she did meet up with her dad, and there's things that happened there with that, but you kind of leave her in kind of a new place, and she's separating from the ghoul, but she's back with Maximus, but she's in a new place that you don't know if her journey is going to bring her back to the vault, or if she's going to want to stay on the surface. And I assume they're going to get caught up in the Legion stuff, and that they're going to have to help, because the town clearly can't defend themselves, but you have the NCR that came in, and so you've had that thread being open a little bit, but barely explored them and that what's going on with that. And it's like, yeah, it opens so many threads, which I enjoyed, and there's a lot of good stories and a lot of fun with that, but it did feel like maybe it expanded a little bit too much. I will say that I probably enjoyed the first season a little bit more than this one, just because it had that newness to it, and you're discovering this world with Lucy, and you're getting a little bit of the mystery going up, but it kind of fed it to you a little bit slower, let you see the towns, go through stuff. I think some of the action was a little bit better in that one as well. This one did have some good action sequences in it as well, but it felt like it was very much more a lore building season that was very much more about, we need to cram in what happened before the explosion, what's going on now, or we got to bring in this group, that group. Even you had some one-offs where you visit towns, and then you got to revisit a couple characters we had from season 1, and you just kind of jumped around quite a lot between each episode, and it did leave with a lot of questions still to be answered. So hopefully season 3 is one that they really find a good way to handle all these different storylines and giving us, because yeah, as you said, it could be, all right, well, this episode's Brotherhood of Steel, this episode's Legion, this one's a Lucy episode, this is a Ghoul episode, but by the time you know it, that's 5 episodes out of your 8 that's already taken up. Got to have an episode, or at least half an episode, for the Vault Dwellers and what we're doing in there. So that 8 episodes is starting to look a little confining with how many story points that they've opened up here. Because if you're a video game fan and you played Fallout, you can have so many side missions and story missions going on one time that you jump around and bounce around. But does that style work or continue to work for a scripted television series if you're getting a little too ambitious with how many threads that you're going to give each thread the proper time to be explored and stuff? Like, you got some fun stuff with the Brotherhood of Steel, but then you kind of had all chaos break out, and you just kind of left it there until the very end secret scene at the end of the last episode that even opens up yet another thread of things to happen. So it's I'm enjoying it. I just hope it doesn't get beyond its boundaries where they can keep the story neat and interesting without, all right, are they going to start doing spin-offs so that we can have all of these stories done right? But it's still fun, but I'm just worrisome that the story's getting a little too spread out.
Yeah, you wonder if it's becoming too abstract at that point, like it's getting just too much. And you kind of wonder if this season's going to wind up just kind of being like an expanded bridge between 2 points. Kind of like you feel like you start off from this jumping point in season 1 where it felt a little more linear, a little more clean, a little more like dipping our toe into the world, and then you just kind of dive completely into the deep end with season 2, and now you're kind of turning. Think about it like a lap in a pool, right? Like if you watch, the Olympics are going on right now, so this is kind of apropos. It's more of a summer Olympic thing than a winter Olympic thing, but think about it like a swim race. like at the Olympics where, they're swimming down to one end, down to the deep end of the pool, and they're kind of flipping back around and they're coming back and they're circling back around. And it kind of feels like that's what they're doing with this, is like, we're going to send you out into the world here with all of this stuff that you kind of got to figure is going to kind of come together at some point for it to kind of all have all these branches converge back again. Like, it's going to come back into this one thing. Like you said, with all these different groups and factions that we're going into, there's going to be some kind of battle that happens where all of these groups have to come together at some point, because a lot of them are chasing similar things and similar ideals that you got to figure their paths are going to cross at some point, with just how close in proximity they all are to each other. So you kind of got to figure, like, it's going to come back to that point, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to see, like, more of these groups in. I want the NCR group to kind of mix more with the Brotherhood of Steel. I want to see where the Legion fits into all this, where they all kind of go, and give me more Macaulay Culkin. Like, it's so cool to see him back in these in projects like this and back onto it,
playing a darker
villain-esque type role, and I'm excited for it because you see kind of how he positions himself into a leadership position in his group, and I'm excited to see where that goes more than anything else. I think is just his involvement in that. I forgot he was going to be in it, and when he showed up, I was just all like, yes, let's go, let's get him involved. And then you just didn't know how important he was going to be to it. It's like, is he just a side character in this group?
Is he just going to get killed off
right away or something? It's like a quick cameo. It's like he's just going to be in there. It's like, oh, great, and then like he meets some brutal. Nope, he's very much a leader of this group now, and it's going to be real interesting to see how he plays into it moving forward. But I'm all here for it, man. Give me more Macaulay Culkin. That was so cool.
It still just made me giggle every time that they called them, Kazar instead of Caesar, and even Lucy calling him out. You mean Caesar?
Nope.
Nope. Kazar. And we're gonna march on Vegas, and we're gonna make Kazar's palace. Okay, yeah. I get that joke. I get that. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, but
very tongue in cheek. But
yeah, you just kind of hope that from a story's perspective, it's a large, expansive world, and there's so many different games, and it's like, all right, this one was like, all right, we're going to take elements from New Vegas and from this game, and because you're setting up another game with where the goal's going, so you're trying to, these are 100-hour video games that you're trying to take from all of them at once to bring all this story together. You just, don't want it to kind of get overtrained where, like, Lucy did feel like more of a side character, and you kind of worry that, okay, well, a lot of the flashbacks should be done, because most of it was around Cooper's story. We think pretty much we got everything of his stuff, so there should be less flashbacks and stuff, so we should have more time to explore. But with Lucy being your main character, you didn't get a whole lot of, I would say, development with her. She was very wishy-washy in a way. Like, she's with the ghoul, but I'm willing to, like, do something if he doesn't. Well, I believe in this. I'm going to take this woman back to her people. I don't care what you say. I'm just going to leave you here dying. You'll be okay. And like, she was just very. I get that she's got onto the surface and it's starting to make her a little cold and changing, because that's kind of how the world is up there. But it just didn't feel like we didn't get a whole lot of development with her. We got a ton with the ghoul, and again, Walton, fantastic. And I love her as Lucy, and I love that character and stuff. So I really do hope we kind of get back to finding out where exactly her place is in this world now, because things have changed. In the end, it's changed a lot for her, knowing what her dad and Vault-Tec was kind of doing and about, even though she hasn't got into the deeper, more mysterious parts of it.
Correct.
You're left wondering, just where is her part of this story really? Where does she belong now in this story? We know where the ghoul is going. We kind of know Maximus still kind of has that tie to the Brotherhood of Steel. He's seen as his protector that helped Vegas. He kind of likes that, being the military guy who can help. You potentially have him maybe join the NCR and becoming a big part of that. So you kind of have a bit more of where the ghoul and where Maximus is. Lucy at the end of this season was kind of the one that I felt was left more of like, all right, what are we doing with her?
Sure. And hopefully season 3 dives more into that. Like you said, she did kind of take a little bit of a backseat. I mean, she was still pretty featured. She was featured in it pretty well, but I do agree, like you said, the Ghoul got so much more development in this, and it's such a cool character, man. A cool aesthetic. He looks like Red Skull if he fought in the Old West. You know what I mean? Just like a very cool looking character. He's a popular character in the games as well, obviously. So it's cool to see them doing something like that. And Walton Goggins, man. I can't think of a bad show I've seen him in. Bad show or movie. Like it's another one of those like not quite John Bernthal level actors for me, but up there. Like still, like he just commands every camera that he's in front of, and it's so cool to see because he does a lot of the heavy lifting in this, and it's really well done, and I'm excited to see where season 3 moves, and we're off to some new locations now, and hopefully we don't have to wait too long to get it, because I know like a lot of things with these shows, it takes a little while to shoot, but I haven't really heard of any negative production things coming when they do this, so hopefully they can get back to it sooner rather than later, and we don't have to wait too long to get a follow-up on this show, because I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, so Fallout Season 2 was an overall fun follow-up to Season 1, which kind of just smashed everything and all expectations. I do feel like Season 1 was a little bit better to me than Season 2 just because it had more, I don't know, the story felt tighter and a little bit better together, where Season 2 just tried to expand in so many different directions. You introduce 20 different groups, you've got 40 different characters going on at any one point between the vaults and the Wasteland and New Vegas and the Brotherhood of Steel and just the Commonwealth and everything. Like, we barely even scratch the surface of the Commonwealth. So there's a lot of story points that were open here that we didn't really get much conclusion on. So there's still a lot to be seen in Season 3. I'm going to give it, I'm torn between a 7.5 and 8 because I enjoyed the season, but I do have some concerns about just how kind of fragmented the story's starting to be just because of how many paths it got. I'll go with an 8. I'd probably give Season 1 a 9. I don't think when we did our review of Season 1, we gave it a score. Back then, I'd give that a 9. I'll probably give this an 8 just because it was still fun. It had some good action. Walton Goggins is fantastic as usual. I just felt that the story got really fragmented here and a little bit too spread out with very few conclusions by the end of the season.
Yeah, I was landing on about a 7.5 myself is where I've kind of saw this. Like, the season's not without its issues. Like, it's still very entertaining, a very entertaining show, one that I'm absolutely excited to continue to follow along with. Like you kind of touched on some of those notes. I feel like it got a little too abstract sometimes at times. And I don't know if it's just like stuff going on in my own life, but there were times, and I know we didn't talk about it while we were doing our review here, but there were times I found myself having trouble like concentrating on what was going on because so much was going on in it that I found myself almost kind of distracted while watching it a little bit. And it was hard to really focus on everything that was happening. I do want to go back and kind of rewatch it again, maybe when things are a little less chaotic sometimes for me, but I feel like it's still a really solid season. It got a little too far into the woods a little bit, and I'm kind of hoping that Season 3 gets it back onto the tracks fully a little bit better, and I'm confident that they can get there because we love Season 1 as much as we did. We know that the elements are there, and I'm kind of hoping that this was more of, like we said, like that bridge between two seasons where you do kind of go out a little bit more and do a little bit more abstract world building just to bring these groups together for something. But that talks about the longevity of the series, too, because like we said, we don't know how long the show's going to go for or if there are plans for spinoffs or anything like that. So you don't really know where all of the focus is going to be on it. And if we're just stuck with this for X number of seasons, who knows when they finally converge and get to that point. We're hoping it's with Season 3, but in a vacuum, Season 2, I think it's solidly worth a 7.5, which is still really good. Like, it's a really good show. I like this show a lot. I'm hoping it gets back more focus for Season 3, though, and gets a little bit more on track to where it feels much more must-see than it did in this season for me. So I'm kind of hoping it gets back to that, but very excited for what's to come.
Because I feel like we have another video game series that's going on with The Last of Us, and we were supposed to get up to 4
Yeah.
They were talking 4 seasons of that, and now they're like, well, season 3 is going to be it. And we know season 3 is mostly going to be about Abby and everything else. Like, I got a little worried because of all these branches that were opened up in this season because, well, what if they decide season 3 is going to be it and they don't get to fully flush out all of these threads that they opened up? Because I don't think they did them in a bad way. They just opened up many threads in an 8-episode season that you're like, well, hopefully they don't decide that season 3 is going to be it, because this feels like it needs at least 4 to 5 seasons just to continue going through all these different threads, because you've kind of still just scratched the surface of Vault-Tec and the mystery of the Wasteland and this world we're in and what is still happening with, you know, the Vault Dwellers and everything there. And like, there's a lot of Fallout games don't have to include everything from everyone right away. And that's kind of what it felt like. All right, we're just going to take all these different elements from New Vegas and all the different games, and we're just going to open up all these story points, and we'll get to them. You may not always be able to get to all of them. So that's why I just hope that season 3 gets a little bit, I wouldn't say linear, but just a little bit more focus on making sure that these story points have some sort of conclusion towards the end, because most of them are still wide open, which you want going into more seasons, is having things that you can still explore. But when you leave a season after 8 episodes with like 18 threads still open here, that's a lot of stuff to keep up with and to think about, all right, what is season 3 really going to be? And we know we're going to get some big battles because they set that up, but where's this overall story going?
Yeah, and hopefully we get a little more clarity on that moving forward as they start to work on season 3, and we get a little more insight on what to do. The show's doing really well for Amazon. It's one of their most watched shows, so I don't feel it's really in any real danger. But let's just hope they get back to a little bit more of that focused storytelling for season 3 for sure, because they definitely need to, because they can't afford to let it drag out too long. I fear it's going to lose people a little bit if it doesn't start kind of moving forward and delivering some conclusions to some of these stories, where it's just like, okay, we get a little bit of a better focus on where everything is going, not just maybe 1 or 2 story beats. So I'm excited to see where they get for that for season 3 for sure.
Yeah, so all episodes of Fallout Season 2 are on Amazon Prime. Watch them all. Let us know what you think. Come to our Discord, our socials, talk to us about it, because you may have a different feeling on it. Like, we're not complaining about having too many threads. We just want to make sure that there's actually a payoff for some of these stories, and that you don't want to feel like you're having to take notes, even though I do when we're doing stuff that we review. There's a big, gigantic thing of notes in front of us here, but it's in a way that's also for my brain to be able to, all right,
what is happening?
We touch on the Legion, Lucy and the Ghoul. We had this group, we had that group, we had this group, and that was 1 episode. Like, you went to 5 different groups, and like, okay, exactly where's that story going? But it's still fun. Like, we feel like we're talking down about it a lot here with the complaints about how many branching stories. It's just, we enjoyed the first season so much, and they've opened up a lot of interesting threads. We just want it to feel like it's not just going to be, all right, we're going to do a new season, and, well, what happened to this thread, that thread, and this thread? You didn't really bring that up.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part about the time that we live in now, where even like 10, 15 years ago, you had a little bit more comfortability in kind of waiting and letting it play out. But now, with everything being, just abruptly ended, and not everything, but a lot of shows not getting that follow-up because they're not as successful or they're too expensive to produce, so they're kind of canceling it or they're canning it, and we don't really get that conclusion. We want to see this fully fleshed out story play out, which is why we give it the eyes that we're giving it. I think the way I could put it best is I want to see a little bit more of a sense of urgency in their storytelling, because you don't know how long you're going to actually have to tell the story you're trying to tell. It's all good if we know they're committed to 8 seasons of this show, and we know we're kind of just in the first quarter of the series at this point. We'd be a lot more forgiving of that, but we kind of want to see a little bit more of that urgency, because we just don't know. Like, you never know. Amazon at any point could be like, well, season 2 was solid. It wasn't as... may have not been as well received as season 1, which I didn't get to look at like reviews by any other people or see how it's doing on any of the review aggregations that you get where it compiles what people are thinking, like Rotten Tomatoes or what have you. But I think it's still underperformed a little bit from what I can recall, but I don't want to quote that's for sure, but give me a little bit more urgency because you don't know. Because if it starts declining in quality and people are starting to, be a little more critical and not enjoying it as much, it may be more apropos for Amazon to say we're not going to invest as much if people aren't feeling it. So give me a little bit more urgency in your storytelling to kind of push it through a little bit. I'd rather they get to an end. I'd almost rather they get to an end of like, hey, they ran it out a little too long and didn't end it that way, rather than getting it abruptly cut off when there was so much more to tell.
Yeah, and it's like we also are in kind of a new age of television that, when we were growing up watching shows as teenagers and young adults, and I sound so old saying that, but we would get 15 to 25 episodes a season of stuff, and now you're really cutting down to 6 to 10 for most things. So you're talking about not giving a whole lot of time per season to go through all these threads. It's like you said, it's almost like you have to dedicate an episode per thread just to kind of go through it, and that does kind of break up your storytelling a little bit if you're having to divert a lot. And you don't know exactly, what's going to go with Amazon if they feel like they want to keep pouring money into it, because it can't be a cheap production with all the sets and the props and the CGI and everything. But we also don't know with the, if you are a gamer, the gaming climate is really still shaky. I mean, Microsoft, just before we started recording this, you got Phil Spencer is stepped down and is retiring. You have who was supposed to be the next in line with Sarah Bonds. She resigned. And then you bring in 2 more people to kind of run it. What if they come in and say, you know what, we don't really like this partnership for TV shows. The Halo partnership with Paramount didn't do well for us, even though this seems to be okay. Let's focus just on the TV side. Microsoft could cut off, that opportunity since they own Bethesda and they own everything Fallout. They could say, well, we just don't want to do it anymore, and that's it.
And then we're stuck, and you don't know what that's going to look like for the show. It could be the end of it. You never know. And that's what I mean by the urgency. You just don't know how the climate's going to play out. Like all things, I hope this show goes on for several seasons and we get some really awesome fleshed out stories, and eventually we would. But just looking at it in a vacuum right now, you're kind of hoping for like, okay, let's really move this a little bit more focused, and we'll see what we get in season 3. I'm excited for it.
And just one last comment on that is, with that new climate with TV, you're not seeing shows get the longevity that they used to. Of Grey's Anatomy is still running for its 376th season.
Absolutely.
But most shows, especially on streaming, are getting 4 to 5, maybe season 6 if you're lucky on stuff. We just had Stranger Things after 20 years getting its 5th season and wrapping up. You're not getting very long runs for series that are for streaming. So just all of that is running through our mind with that of like, all right, you're branching out and you're giving us a ton of different story points to look forward to that can have some great battles and some real fun. Just don't get too ambitious, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you and everybody else who's enjoyed the series, that you don't get to kind of conclude what you're going. Because if Microsoft and Amazon both said that season 3 is going to be the last one, you got a lot of story points to try to wrap up in 8 episodes.
And then we get a shotgun blast of stuff, and we were like, well, they had to rush it. And this is exactly what we were worried about in this episode. And we can kind of point back and say, we kind of told you so. So we'll see what happens. We'll get season 3, hopefully sooner rather than later. But thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We know we've been off for a couple weeks now. I'm glad you're finally feeling better and have gotten over,
Kidney stone tried to kill me.
Yeah, it's not fun, man, but I'm glad you're better. We're back to our regularly scheduled programming here for sure. But if you feel so inclined to, help us out and anything you could do to help, likes, follow, shares, it all makes a difference for us. You can also subscribe on YouTube, all your favorite audio platforms. It all helps us out so much. And once again, we can't thank you enough for your continued support.
You can also become a subscriber on Patreon, which you'll get all the episodes early. You can get exclusive merch, get a lot of access stuff, get your name read out at the end of the episode. So if you want to support us that way, it only costs like $5 a month. To give us that kind of support, head over to patreon.com/we'll bring the popcorn.
And thank you so much for tuning in for this episode. We'll see you next week for another new episode.